Good morning, good morning. It's nice to see people in person here. The future of our center, we've been studying evolving and growing spiritual communities for over 3 years, and all the best studies that we can come up with would suggest the future is going to be hybrid communities. You know what a hybrid community is, right? They told me the best way to think of it is to think of like the Jimmy Fallon show. There's always a studio full of people, and the larger audience is increasingly becoming the people who are signing in now from all over the world. So welcome everybody. Both groups are special. We're all together. I wanted to start today. I want to thank you for the opening. Who was here? It was Celia. Did you do it?
Reverend Judas did the opening
remotely, right?
Yes.
Okay. I heard it in the background, so I wasn't sure. I want to go to our textbook. In case you don't know, we're a New Thought Center. We teach New Thought. We use Ernest Holmes in the textbook, The Science of Mind. Some of you don't know who he was at this point. And the book, he says it's a philosophy, it's a faith, it's a way of life. And from the book, You Can Heal Your Life, there's been many other books written about the science of mind. The book that we use every Thursday night is the book by Louise, which is entitled You Can Heal Your Life. And she was a student here at this center, and she went on to publish this book that went around the world in 28 languages and really had a big impact. So if you're interested in learning how to love yourself, to change the inner dialogue around, this is the place to come to on both Sundays and also Thursdays. Thursdays in particular is good for new people if you're wanting to understand how it works. The first 4 chapters of our textbook, I remember encountering many years ago, are entitled The Thing Itself, The Way It Works, What It Does, and How to Use It. And coming from a parochial school when I was a kid, and I went into a big center. In those days, they had big religious science centers. When I heard the pastor talk about God as the thing itself, I wanted to bless myself, because I grew up in a time and age where the idea when you're speaking of God, you speak of God reverentially, and so this was a whole new thing. The thing itself, meaning the creative intelligence, the universe, the source, God as the thing, and then the way it works was much different than what I was taught as a kid. As a kid, you're taught that you revere it, you pray to it, it's something that there are mixed messages, that it loves you, and also that it's all powerful, and it can be all punishing, and any type of vengeance and all that would be it is with it, the Lord. So we come into a teaching like this, and a lot of those ideas are looked at and let go of. And the next chapter would explain in the textbook what it does, how it operates. And then probably the most useful to people who are new is the section which is entitled How to Use It. So we spend a lot of time probably on Thursday nights in different places. Once we understand how this teaching works, then we explain how you can personally get involved, how you can benefit from the use of it, the practice of it. So I would invite anybody who has interest to pick up a copy of the textbook at some point, because it's packed full of really useful information. I don't refer to it every week because most of our audience, if you're new, you're looking to know more how to improve your life and how it works. But We do have other classes if people want to get into it on a deeper level. But it doesn't have to be deep to be understood. Louise Hay famously said, it's all very simple. And it is. See, there's books like this, and I could name a whole bunch of other books by people like Troward, Judge Troward and Ralph Waldo Emerson, and a lot of New Thought authors, which were all part of this transcendental movement. All of them are fascinating, right? But, you know, if you want to read them, you're really going to have to spend some time with them to grasp their deeper meanings. I think actually the teaching is simpler than most people think. I don't think you have to be extremely educated. I don't think you have to read difficult books or scriptures. It's really a practice centered around an idea that there is this presence, this power that's in everything and everyone and all the time. And that this presence and this power does nothing other than respond. It responds to you. We call it a principle. It's called many things. It operates according to a law of cause and effect. And really what that simply is saying, whatever my consciousness is, okay, is going to be reflected in my world. Okay. That's a simple statement, right? So what's your consciousness? Anyone want to hazard a guess out there in the audience? I guess I'm asking the question without getting an answer. Your consciousness is going to be the sum total of what of your knowing. And your knowing is more than just your conscious thoughts, right? We have our conscious thoughts. We're here on Sunday. We've been thinking a lot of things today, all morning. So it's my conscious thinking, but it's also the whole body of thinking and thoughts that have been going on within me throughout my lifetime. When I've taught this particular class to people before, I could depict it if I had a whiteboard here in a class, I would say it's like an iceberg. And everyone knows an iceberg. You can envision one in your mind. Most of the iceberg is a vast mountain that's under water. And the tip of it is what we see. Well, when you think of your mind, you think of consciousness. It's that part of your thinking that's awake, that's choosing, it's selective. Okay, that's what we do in this teaching. We learn how to choose, and choose hopefully better things, more expansive things. But it's not all of it's that plus it's more. It's the part of us that's beneath the surface where we've stored all of our life's experiences, all our thoughts, all our beliefs, everything that was taught to us by our parents, our grandparents, our friends, all of our hurts, all of our experiences. You don't think they're operating in your life, but they're still there. You know, you've heard people talk about, okay, this person has repressed a lot of stuff. Or they push things into their unconscious. They don't want to think about it anymore and all of that. And that's what we do as people. But that doesn't mean that stuff isn't still there. I mean, you can stimulate different parts of your brain, I'm told, and every memory you've ever had is there. So we have within us a lot of information. We only use a small portion of our actual physical brain. But when it comes to consciousness, and it's an important discussion, your consciousness is reflected in your world. People talk about it like it's a mirror. Or we'll say whatever is living on the inside is playing on the outside. We'll say it in different ways. We'll say you are the author of your own experience. And what does that mean? Well, it's my thinking, and it's my improved thinking, because we work on changing our thinking here, that starts to play out in my life, in our lives. When we learn how to do affirmative prayer, which is such an important thing, affirmative prayer is a process wherein you begin to state positive affirmations out loud, or you can do it privately, to yourself. But you might be saying, I'm centered in God activity, I'm an inlet and outlet of creative intelligence, and I declare that I am supplied and supported in every way. And and that's all true, by the way. You are one with the one intelligence, and you are supplied and supported in every way. And when you say these things, and you say, I'm prosperous, and I'm good, and I'm healthy, or whatever it is you're proclaiming, you could say there's a divine pattern of health operating in me, which is true. Anything that conflicts with those ideas of truth that are in your subconscious mind usually come to your awareness. It's like, if I'm going to state something really wonderful about myself, or if you are, if there's an acceptance of what you've stated, that's really wonderful, because then you're starting to do what we call spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer. But what people run into is, it's almost like an instant feedback. If you do an affirmation that you're something, you're wonderful, and like Louise would say, I love, accept, and approve of myself exactly as I am, that's great. If something comes up, though, that says, oh, no, you're not. Really, you're not that, you've been bad, you have failed, you have not been a good son, good daughter, If something comes up in the way that's discordant, that's where you feel not okay, you feel guilty, you feel any of these things, then, of course, all that indicates in this teaching is you have work to do. It just means you have things buried beneath the surface. Because our conscious mind is important. Our conscious mind is the part of us that thinks the new thought. And then there needs to be an acceptance of that new thought within us if you want to see it start to bear fruit. So I'm going to go to the glossary just for a second so you can hear what Ernest Holmes had to say about treatment. He actually has two definitions in the textbook. And we don't usually use the word treatment as much today. We refer to it as affirmative prayer. And I've had some great teachers over the years, Jane Claypool in particular, Reverend Jane. She used to say spiritual mind treatment's the crown jewel of this teaching. She says it's so very powerful. If you learn how to use it, you can heal anything. You can improve anything. But for you to have that kind of power, there has to be an acceptance of those words. It has to be more than just an affirmation. Because as you would guess, we can go around affirming things all day long, right? But if we don't believe what we're saying, what effect do you think the treatments are going to have? So in other words, for them to have power, there has to be belief, there has to be acceptance. So Ernest Holmes in the textbook said treatment is the art, it's the act, and it's the science of consciously inducing thought within the universal, what he calls subjectivity, universal mind. You're going to do it for the purpose of demonstrating that we are surrounded by a creative medium which responds to us through a law of correspondence. Okay, that's a lot of fancy words. But if you break it down a little bit, so this treatment, I can teach you how to do it, but it isn't enough for me to teach you how to do it. He said it's an art. It's a process you've got to do with yourself, where you're going to turn it around within yourself. It's an art, it's an act, it's the science of you consciously putting, I'll say positive, new thinking into your subjectivity. Let's say you're carrying around a lot of guilt or shame and your life has been pretty awful and you've got this whole story going about life is unfair for 100 reasons, and nobody's going to argue with you because you probably have been through a lot of that. But if you don't do something with that, whatever that belief is in totality has a tendency to keep playing out in your life. You might have watched the movie The Secret a decade ago or longer, where the big genie, which represents, the creative power, It was always saying, your wish is my command. Your wish is my command. So if you have within yourself a lot of history and story, you can break down the word history to be his story or her story. That story that's within my unconscious, you think of that iceberg, which is the part that's underwater. If that doesn't get dealt with, it keeps playing out in your life. And you might be walking around with a lot of affirmations saying, I'm whole and complete, I'm healthy, wealthy, and wise, and I'm good, and I'm valuable. And you are. But beneath the surface, if all this undercurrent of negativity or unhealed stuff, or just the history that comes from our families, our grandparents, if that's not dealt with, then what's going to happen, what's going to be reflected in your life is it'll be the totality of your thinking. I have a minister friend who says it isn't the single thought that's reflected. She says it's the tendency. So, I mean, you know people, you can almost pick up on somebody if they tend to be very positive and up, and if their mind is all about positive expectancy, which is one of the goals here, is to develop positive expectancy. What do you imagine it's like if someone is just generally optimistic? If this is who they are. Now, this isn't tough to envision. If I'm a person who's pretty positive about most things most of the time, what do you imagine my life is going to look like? It's pretty obvious. If I'm a person that I'm a tortured soul in the sense that I'm filled with worry, I'm worried about everything, and I can't let go of anything or anyone, and I'm dictatorial, I'm telling everybody what they should do and all of that, and I'm fearful, and I'm just trying to run everything, right? I don't have a lot of faith, and I don't have a lot of confidence. I don't feel great about myself, and I'm trying to control the world. Now, that's a whole body of thoughts. It's nothing wrong with the person. Louise Hay would say everybody comes in like a blank, beautiful child full of wonder, right? But we acquire a lot of stuff over time. And even a person who's got all of this, what Dr. Holmes would talk about, he says they're carrying around a lot of dead weight or like corpses. I don't use that word often, but that's what he used. It's just like, okay, it doesn't matter, you're 22, you're 32, you're 42, you had a lot of experience in your life and you're carrying it around with you. You don't think you're carrying it around with you, but you've been injured in different ways. You've been betrayed in relationships, people have done things, and you've done things. So you've got the guilt of what you've done, and you've got what's been happened to you, and then you try all your might to be in a new moment. You try to think new thoughts. You try to improve, and you will eventually. But the thing is, you've got to at least recognize that there is this part of you that is there, and it always is there. Now, you can improve things by thinking positive thoughts and starting to practice this teaching. You can consciously refute the negatives when you catch yourself thinking negatively, and you begin to practice. But what we're trying to do always is to, with new thought, we're trying to input new thinking into our consciousness. And I wish I had a diagram here because I can do it better with a diagram. If you think of, again, that iceberg in the conscious part of your mind, you're thinking positive thoughts. And I know when I'm not in agreement with the positive thinking, something comes back to me that'll say, oh, no, you're not. You're not that, And see, when you're finding something within yourself that's negating your positive words, affirmations, and treatments, all that really tells you is that's where I need to do my work. It's just that simple. I've been in some great spiritual, I'll call them groups. They could be therapeutic sessions over the years. And the question always would be, well, what's coming up for you? Because we're saying we're living in connection. What does living in connection mean? Well, that's an expression we often I've used in many groups. If I'm coming from connection, that means most days I'm coming from a sense of I'm connected with Source. that light, you see these receptacles, you can plug yourself right into it because you're part of it. When you're coming from source and you're connected, then all these other things seem to disappear. You know, when you center yourself in God awareness and you know who you are, you center yourself in source, it animates you, just like you're plugging into that electricity because you're part of that. You know, and when you're doing that, you're connected. So when we're doing our affirmative prayer, we're taking new ideas, expansive ideas, positive ideas, ideas of truth, and we're stating them. And if something comes back for us that says, oh, no, you're not healthy, and or I'll say I'm supplied and supported, and what comes back is, oh, no, not really, because this is happening and that's happening. Well, on a practical level, then that's where the teaching really becomes helpful. Louise Hay would have said it. She would say, you know, it's like cleaning my house or my apartment. You begin wherever you are. Practically, in any given day, when you find yourself in a bad mood, or you find yourself reacting to anything, people, any person, I used to think it was all about them, right? That was a problem I had. I would think everybody else was the problem, you know. But what you start to understand here is you're the only thinker in your mind. So you have far more power at your disposal than what you know. Okay, so the better way to handle is notice what's coming up to you with you when other people are doing anything. Okay, I learned somewhere along the line that I am the author of my own experience and I get to name things. Another thing is I get to say whether this is good, I get to react, I get to, you know, they used to say, okay, how's it going for you, Shakespeare? And I would say, what do you mean with that? Like a wisecrack. Well, it's because you don't know it, but you're in fact writing the script. You're writing your own life. You're assigning these people in your life, every last one of them, roles. You get to decide if this person is your friend, this person is the court jester, this person, when they come in, you get to decide when they go out. You have a lot of power, but you don't know it. So what we're wanting you to understand, if you can, to the extent you can take it in, you are the author, okay? As if you understand basic premise of science of mind is we live in consciousness. We live in what Deepak Chopra called this unitary field of life and activity. You can call it divine. We live in love, we live in intelligence, we live in creative intelligence, and we're all one with it, okay? Every encounter you have with anyone is a holy encounter. Every person you meet is an aspect of this divine stuff. We language it in all kinds of ways. We could say you, each of you, and each of you on the call are individualizations of it. Whatever the creator is, you are that too. Whatever this divine activity is, you are that also. I used to think of it like if you can envision an ocean and all the waves, like just any ocean anywhere. It was explained to me this way long ago. Each of you are like the crest of the wave. Okay, you know a little bit more than most people because you're involved in a teaching like this that lets you know that you are one with everything. So you're like the crest of the wave, and here you are. You know this. You know that you're part of this thing, and it's amazing to have that awareness. You are each points of awareness within the very, what we call body of God, okay? Now, how cool is that? You know, we used to pray to God thinking God's above and God's going to save us and God's going to rescue us and all that. And the fact of the matter is, you're looking for God. We, historically, as people, have been looking for God everywhere. But we haven't really been looking for it where it always is. It's always within you, okay? Individualizations of God. You might say, I am an individualization of God. And try that on, see how that feels, because it's true. I am a point of awareness within the mind of God. I am an inlet and an outlet and an expression of this creative activity. So I can learn to work with it. Once you have a little bit of self-awareness, which is what you get out of this teaching, self-awareness, it's not just me, Greg the body, here speaking. It's like I am one with this creative intelligence, this spirit. And that's pretty cool. And it responds to me when? Always. And if I don't like the life I'm creating because of the thoughts that I'm thinking consciously and the whole body of thoughts that I've just been storing and stuffing away, I can make improvements. Ernest Holmes said there's power for good in the universe, of which you are a part, and you can use this power. So that's a lot to digest, I know. When I was a kid, I used to pray to God above. That was my heritage. Most of us come out of what they call the Abrahamic religions, which would be Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all of that, the foundational faiths. And, you know, there was a lot of baggage that came at me from my version of it, and a lot of ideas of what God was and what God wasn't. And when I came into a teaching like this years ago, I don't want to get into the whole story of it, but I didn't feel any of what I was learning was supporting me very much. All of I was hearing was filled with dogma and the notion that something was wrong with me and there's something missing, and we exist as sinners in sin, and we must live our lives to seek the acceptance or the pleasure of God, and again, born in sin and continue to sin. And now maybe some of you, younger people in particular, were spared some of that stuff. I think it gets better with each passing generation, at least I hope. But we have a different thing here, you know. We have a sense, we have an awareness that this energy, this love is omnipresent, okay? It doesn't play favorites. It doesn't matter if you're living in Cambodia now or Mexico or the islands or anywhere else or what faith that you have. It's a universal presence. So the idea that I'm thinking another religion is wrong or another people are wrong or any of that type of thinking is old thinking, okay? We have a God or a notion of God or spirit that's much bigger than that could never play favorites, okay? That we're all part of, and it responds to us all to the level that we, you know, as you learn to commune with it's an interesting thing about it. I got that idea, I think, from Ralph Waldo Emerson many years ago when I was reading him. He said, the universe is wooing you. And of course, everybody likes the idea of being wooed, right? And what that means is, you know, in our day-to-day living, and we're acting out our thoughts and our beliefs and stuff, there's still something that's going on within us that might cause us to be restless. The universe, or that people call it the small voice, is always attempting to get your attention. It just, if you're off track, there's something there to remind you. There's that old song, there's always something there to remind you. It's there to remind you to step forward, to step up, to make the changes that are necessary. It's not condemning. If you find there's a condemning activity going on within you, that's not the universe. That's you. You know, the part that condemns is the part of us that's still in judgment. We grew up in families where we might have received a lot of praise. We might have also received a lot of condemnation. Louise very eloquently speaks of the word should in her book, You Can Heal Your Life. And she asked us just to notice, how often do we use the word should and all of its synonyms? And if you really want to be honest, or I got honest about it some number of years ago, I found that I was using the word should a lot. And so I had a better idea for all you. how you should do it. And I wasn't necessarily having a better idea for me, which was really kind of terrible, meaning, you know, I just had all the answers for you. And this teaching is really an interesting teaching, because what it really invites us to do is take those fingers back where we point and direct everybody else, where we do all of our critical thinking and our judgment, and begin the process of noticing what you're thinking and what you're saying and how you're judging yourself and how you're using those words. That word in particular is a word that speaks of great rigidity. So when we're using it a lot, it's not that there's anything wrong with us. It just indicates that we were raised in families where we had a lot of rigid rules that were passed on to ourselves, and we torture ourselves with the same rigid rules. We're trying to live up to expectations oftentimes that are very unreasonable, and really of another time. And many of the rules that were taught to us as children might have been there, they may have been beneficial for us when we were children, but you could take another look at a lot of that now and let go of it. Many examples, be afraid of these people who are bad, be careful of strangers, all the things, and many more. A lot of messaging, like you're just like your brother, your sister, your mother, you're never going to be this, you're never going to be that. It's kind of like we get scarred, not permanently, when we're kids, because we take all of this stuff in, and it becomes part of our overall belief system. When you get into the science of mind, you have an opportunity, or you get into new thought. It doesn't have to be science of mind, because new thought is presented in different ways. It's not just us that teach us, but teach it. When you get into this type of teaching, we're going to tell you over and over again, first of all, you got the power. It isn't in the churches. These churches come and go all over the country, and they're having a tough time right now. But the teaching will always be around to remind you that, first of all, you live, you move, and you have your being in this divine substance, okay? And it responds to you because it has to, okay? It has to. It's the way it works. It's a law. We call it like 5 different names. I make things very simple. The law of correspondence, the law of cause and effect, the law of attraction, are all saying the same thing, that life is responding to you. And if you look to your life and you don't like what you're seeing, there's no one to blame, and you really, if you're working it correctly, you're not going to blame yourself. One of the ideas that Louise said best, I think better than anyone, is that everyone's doing the best that they can. People are evolving. The things I used to do when I was younger, I would be incapable of doing most of them now, and the ones that I'm still capable of doing, I'm working on to eliminate. Think of your own life. We get caught up in these stories, everything's bad, but the fact of the matter is, everybody who's on this call who even can relate to any of this, each of you have grown so much, and yet you don't give yourself any credit, right? Or enough credit. I was this weekend preparing for this talk, and I was reading the comments of a famous singer who's in her late 70s, and you all know who she is, but it doesn't matter. She would never read her reviews, because she was her own worst critic. And recently, she wrote, she's starting to read, her assistant brought her some of this stuff. And there was so much praise that she was given through her lifetime, but she could never take any of that in. And I think, what a pity if you get to be 78 or 9 years old and you've been that hard on yourself all that time. And I think we do that. You had so much success already. Why don't you remember the success and build on that? What is it about us that keeps on, I'm not good enough, it's not enough, it's not enough? The whole world thinks you're a star, at least in this woman's case. But, you know, you don't have that for yourself. So when Louise Hay wrote the book, You Can Heal Your Life, she spoke of that point in her career working for 5, 6, 7 years, I can't remember how many, presenting group after group after group and having all kinds of private sessions. And she said, you know, when it gets down to it, after everyone's got a different version of their story, their experience, the tragedies in their family and all, she'll say, but on a human level, you get down to it, people just don't really feel adequate or good, or like, God, they may have killed themselves trying to help their family, but they still don't feel like what they did was enough. I mean, what's enough? When can you ever just give yourself a little bit of praise? You don't have to be perfect. No one's perfect. But, you know, why do we have to, you know, criticize ourselves so much? If you struggle with any of those issues, our Thursday night group is really a great place to be. People have been coming to it for years. We've been doing it. Well, I've been presenting that material every week for probably the past 30 years, and it's always a draw because the underbelly, the undercurrent of most of people's problems, and that can be as you come into new thought and you're wanting to learn self-mastery, or if you're dealing with some type of behavior or addiction or problem, it comes down oftentimes to some part of I don't feel enough, I don't do enough, and there's guilt and shame. And so we join together each Thursday and we remind ourselves of certain things that we're reminding ourselves of here, you know. When we use the phrase from the old song, how great thou art, we're not referring to a God above. No, we're referring to you, okay? Each of you are individualizations of this wondrous power. And this power that's always responding to you because it has no choice. Okay, life doesn't have any choice. It has to respond to you. That's what it does. That's the thing to realize. So if you know that you have all this power, then obviously we'll want to start to learn how to do what? Use it, right? Ernest Holmes said we have this great bank account downtown with our name on it. I don't know what amount of money he mentioned because it was 1929. But we can imagine today it'll be, you know, millions and millions of dollars. There's an account downtown. It's got the name Greg or Celia or Jimmy. And the thing is, what we want to learn how it works so we can draw the good to us, the health, the wealth, the creativity, the freedom, the joy, the happiness, because that's our natural state. If you're not experiencing some sense of joy, contentment, and a sense of positive expectancy in your life, that means you're filling your life with a lot of stuff that's, I'll say, not life-giving. Okay? So we learn how to be practitioners here. That's our term for people who practice the teaching. Anybody's a practitioner who works at this. We don't have to be perfect at it. We just need to keep working with it. Louise Hay would say it's only a thought you're having about anything, right? And a thought can be changed. So if you find yourself having one of those days where everything seems wrong, or, you know, you've had those days before, I presume, right, where nothing seems to be working the way you want it to, and you might have even forgotten that you were a child of God and all is well, you're free to turn that around. Our founding pastor here was Raymond Charles Barker, who was famous for saying, I have a rich father. He's always saying that. And what he was trying to say is, look, I have an abundant consciousness. And whatever the heck the problem is, you know, okay, whatever it is that seems so big, whatever is in me is bigger than the problem. But for me to access that, I got to learn how to plug in. Imagine that plug. I need to plug into the truth. I speak so often about the parable of the prodigal child because it's the perfect parable. You're born into everything. Now you walk away from it for a while, and you can forget who you are for a while, and you can suffer, and you can do all kinds of things. But as soon as you remember, and that's the thing, remembering and forgetting, it's the game we play. As soon as you remember who you are, I have a rich father, mother, whatever, and plug into that, there's a restoration and a sense of, I can do this, and you can do this. Whatever is in your life, without exception, and no matter how awful, is, or how good, whatever is in your life is in your consciousness, meaning you've drew it to you. And that can be matters of health and wealth and all kinds of things. But as some ministers have told me years ago, and now I believe, whatever it is, you are bigger than it. Okay? The conditions that are in your life don't have consciousness. You have consciousness. So what does that mean? You have the ability to turn things around. You have the ability to practice the teaching. You have the ability to input new information. And as you believe the new information, your world will literally change. I think it was Stuart Wilde, an author that I used to read, who said there will be a quickening that will happen in your day-to-day living as you simply start to practice the teaching. Now you might say, oh, it's too late for me, Greg. I have some friends, well, I'm getting older myself. So, I've done this for 50, 60 years, and I'll say it doesn't matter. It's great that you're here now and that you're working with it. I've had students who've started practicing this. One woman, Joyce, I encountered her in her late 80s, and she started turning things around in her 90s, and it was remarkable. But it doesn't matter wherever you are, you just begin. Some of the fundamentals, things that we teach here is that we talk about a presence. There's an expression. It's a presence. It's never an absence. So as we learn to live what we'll call the metaphysical approach, we understand that we're living in it, we're moving in it, and we have our existence in it. It's like the goldfish that's looking for water. It's crazy because it lives in it, right? You live in it. You swim in it. You breathe in it. And it responds to you. So when you start to understand, okay, I've got the power, and it's responding to me, and here's my life, and gee, I don't like parts of my life. Okay, so that's good information. Okay, what you don't want to do is you don't want to start blaming the people in your life. They're not the problem. They never have been. See, everybody who comes into your life on some level, can't explain it all perfectly, but I believe it's true. Everyone that comes in there's almost like a spiritual invitation because there's a lesson, okay? And you're going to learn something from every encounter, and you get the opportunity to stay in those relationships. You have an opportunity to redefine those relationships. You have an opportunity also to exit those relationships. When I was younger and quite codependent, that was the phrase around 1990, is everything was about somebody else. And other people were defining you and defining your relationships. As you wake up into this teaching more and more, we take the finger back. There's no blaming anybody. It's more, okay, a religious scientist will use phrases like I intend, I know, I allow. These are very powerful phrases. I intend, I know, and I allow. Those are not victim phrases. There's another phrase. We learn to take charge of our lives so we are not other referred. A lot of people will explain their lives in terms of what other people are doing. And when you come into a teaching like this, you begin to start explaining your life in terms of what you desire, what you know, what you realize, what you want, what you intend. We release the need to be victims and play the blame game. You, every one of you, have all the power in the world at your command. Florence Scovel Shinn wrote a wonderful book years ago, which was entitled, Your Word is Your Wand. You get to decide. I remember my mother, she gets smarter every year after. She's always smart, but she used to say, it's entirely up to you. And she was so right. I didn't know how right she was when I was younger. You know, and the fact is, your life, you don't look over there for approval, or here, or to anyone. Louise Hay said, self-acceptance and self-approval are the keys to all positive changes. So I don't know what anybody's waiting for. There's no reason to wait. You know, you begin wherever you are. And you can leave this center today, or in your homes, the people are listening, you can say, I'm gonna make a decision. It's the name of one of our books, Raymond Charles Barker, The Power of Decision. I'm gonna make a decision starting here, starting now, to practice. And practice what? Practice seeing the good, practice seeing the God. From another spiritual discipline, same idea though, I could see peace instead of this, right? I can see peace instead of anything. I do not have to react and label things as bad or people. I can understand that whoever these people are in my life that seem to be wreaking havoc sometimes, they're spiritual beings and they're doing the best they can. Now, I don't have to stay with them. I don't have to put up with it. I can walk away, but I don't have to judge them and condemn them. They are who they are. Each of us are evolving, or what used to be said to me in fun, each of us are evoluting along. And who they are, whoever these people are giving you grief, you know, they're spiritual beings. And they are, this is where they are. You're at choice. You get to decide how much you want to be involved with, of course. But and likewise, I'm a spiritual being, and you're a spiritual being. And give yourself a break. Okay, so you haven't been perfect. You have missed, the word for sin from the ancient Aramaic, I'm told, is missing the mark. Okay, I've missed the mark a lot. What do you want me to do? Condemn myself, you know, throw myself off a cliff? No, I mean, people are growing and they're evolving. And the idea, hopefully, is you extend love and you extend mercy to people and you leave them alone, really. And with yourself, from Louise Hay, never, never, never criticize yourself. Just stop, because nothing good comes from it. If you're trying to grow, you're going to grow best through self-approval and self-acceptance. And you know, and you'll make the changes. The behavior will change, you will change. Much comes from love and the extension of love and forgiveness. Very little comes from criticism and judgment. Okay? Again, we teach a metaphysical approach. We teach what we call the affirmative approach. We're here to lift people up. We're here to lift ourselves up. And we're here to extend peace and love to everybody. And really, we start with ourselves. Because if you have it for yourself, then all of a sudden you won't have any problems. You'll be amazed how you won't have problems with other people. I mentioned when I was a younger person, I could see what was wrong with everybody so quickly. And it really meant that you've heard the expression, if you spot it, you got it. So I was able to see it in everybody, but I wasn't really able too well to own it for myself. When you love yourself more and more, you won't have the need to be talking about other people anymore. It just won't interest you. You will become, these are all the old expressions, you'll really want to be doing your father's business. Okay, now we'll say father, mother's business. Meaning, if you're doing your spiritual work, you're not there to be a fault finder. You're going to realize that all these individuals in our lives who in your mind don't measure up, they're evolving, they are where they are, they're going to grow. Leave them alone. You know, we have power to use greater than ourselves, and we can bring forth great change in our life simply by working with our own consciousness. In the textbook, I read you the first part of the definition of treatment. He has a second definition in the glossary. In its more simple meaning, Ernest Holmes says, affirmative prayer, affirmative living, is the time, the process, and method necessary to the changing of our thought. Treatment is clearing our thoughts of the negativity, the negation, clearing our thoughts of doubt and fear, and causing ourselves to perceive the ever-presence of God. So that's ultimately what we're here doing as new metaphysicians or as truth students. We're causing ourselves to perceive the presence of good and God. Edwin Gaines, a New Thought speaker, taught me that many years ago. We're here to see the good and the God. That's where we go, because surely it's there if you looked for it.